From Puerto Rico to the U.S. Navy, Marcos Colon Martin shares with us his love for classical saxophone and later finding his voice in jazz. Next on OTP.
And we thank you so much for getting in and coming in and talking to us today. You were born in Puerto Rico. And before we get into your musical journey, tell us a little bit how you got started with the saxophone. Was there music at home? Give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, Mark, thank you so much for having me. It's
Sure,
really is my pleasure doing this, and congratulations for this podcast. I
sure.
think it's a great thing that you're doing. Um, so yeah, I grew up right in my hometown. It's called Caguas.
Jaguars.
It's a small town. Well, kind of small town in Puerto Rico, but very active town. A lot of commerce, a lot of things happening there.
Mhm.
And my family and my parents are non-musicians.
Oh,
And the
wow.
interesting and yeah, and the interesting thing about my family is that they're not musicians, but all three of their children became musicians.
Yeah. It's in the blood somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is. And I believe that my mom said that my her father, my grandpa, used to play guitar or something. And I know I do have a cousin actually who's doing. He has a rock band now in Puerto Rico. So I think for sure there's something there. I mean,
Right.
especially all three children in the household becoming musicians. So I'm the
Yeah.
youngest. My sister is the oldest, and she's a flute player.
Oh, okay.
And then my brother is the second, the middle child. He's a trumpet player.
Ah,
So
very
you had
good.
a flute player, trumpet player, and then me, saxophone player. So uh,
Does that mean
of
you went
course
wrong
there.
somewhere?
No, of course not.
Right,
I
right.
yeah, yeah. I did things right. No,
Yeah.
uh, so we grew up also in church.
Okay.
We went to, as growing up, we went to a Baptist church in
Right.
in my hometown, and the church scene. There's a lot of music
Right on, man.
in church. So we were. I remember as a little kid also being in the little children's choir
Yeah.
for special events. So there was definitely a lot of influence growing up, and even though my parents are not musicians, I remember they will always put classical music. They both love classical music,
Ah,
and yeah, they will play on. I mean, I still remember my my dad still had a, a record player at home when I was growing up, and he would often play like Beethoven
right.
or different composers, and he loved that. I remember he's always loved film music.
Oh, yeah.
So, and he was still a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
he was one of those people that he went
Right.
back when Star Wars released in '77. He was there in the movie theaters. He was always a fan of John Williams music. So
Right.
we he would often play. He
Right.
had, I remember the record of Darth Vader's face on the Star Wars LP. And he would play it, and we will also play it too.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, even though they're not musicians, there was a lot of influence there with
Right.
what we were exposed to. Um, and then it all started with my sister. I can't really remember how she got started, but I remember when she started practicing flute at home.
Okay.
Uh, and I think it went from there. That she started it, so then we got
R-
interested in doing it. My brother then
Right.
uh, got interested in playing trumpet, and then when I was 11 years old, that's when I got interested in playing saxophone.
I see.
Um, yeah, so we all went to this in Puerto Rico. The music education scene in Puerto Rico is very interesting. Um, which is that in regular public schools or even private schools, there are not many schools that have a band program or
Oh,
an orchestra program or
okay.
a regular music program that you see in the States. It's the what they have in Puerto Rico is mostly it's like mini conservatories that
Oh,
work like a after school program.
oh, okay.
So we will all go to our. I remember we went to a private Christian school, um, and at the end of the day, when we were done with school, we will go
Oh,
to that
okay.
after school program in a different spot in town.
Right.
They had their own facilities,
Ah,
and we would take their music from
classes.
private lessons,
Ah,
uh, ensemble playing, solfege.
yeah.
They would do that all there. Yes. So yeah, and that's pretty much how we got started.
That's
And
that's kind of a unique, different approach. As you were talking, I was thinking, now you've taught in the school systems here. Do you think that might be a better alternative or just something different to have the music programs as a kind of a school in itself, outside
mhm.
of the uh, quote unquote elective kind of thing with here in the States? What is your thinking about that between the two? I mean, it seems like as you said, the conservatory kind of thing would be a little bit more intense or very much more involved because it's focused. Tell me a little bit about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely different, and of course, and before I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit to my involvement with the Navy, but
Yeah.
before working with the Navy, I was living in Houston,
Hmm.
and I work a lot with schools over there. Which also in Texas they have a very unique um, thing about private lessons over there, which
Okay.
is what I was working at. Is That's what I was working in Houston, just teaching private lessons for different school districts. Um, yeah, it's definitely different what they have in Puerto Rico, and honestly, I don't know. I really don't know what's best
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think both offer certain benefits. And
Sure.
I do remember, I don't know if things have changed in those after school programs in Puerto Rico today, but when I was growing up, I remember it being strict in a way that, for example, when people enrolled, they would not be given an instrument right away,
Okay.
and kids will be placed in a solfege class
Oh
or
yeah.
solfege / theory
Right.
class first, and basically during the week after you're done right with your school,
Hmm.
after school you will go to the music school, and kids will only take theory and solfege for a
Oh
while, for a
wow.
few months.
Wow.
And I remember we used this book, the Dan Hoyser solfege method, it was
Right.
called.
Okay.
Um, and this is all like very European type of music education method.
Right.
Um, I think that's the influence that Puerto Rico got there, maybe from uh, from years ago, from when
Yeah.
even maybe when music education was starting, they had influence from European, being, Puerto Rico first being part of Spain
Right. Right.
uh, before it became a U.S. colony, years ago.
Sure.
But yeah, we used the Dan Hoyser solfege method, and you needed to pass the exercise number 31. I still remember this. Exercise number 31 for you to get an instrument.
Oh wow.
And
What if what
in
happened if you didn't?
uh I, I don't know.
Start over.
Yeah, I don't know if you like were pushed back, or
Right.
for sure
Right.
it wasn't that, because it was also, that's the thing, that the music school, the music program, a detail that I left out was, it's free of charge.
Wow. Crazy.
It's funded by the government. And I remember my parents would give them, they would ask for donations too, right?
Sure.
Donations, as I think that the school also worked in a type of way like a nonprofit organization.
Right. Right.
So they would get donations from people if people wanted to donate money. So I remember my parents will give a donation every year.
Uh,
Um, so I think being free of charge and everything. If you didn't pass number 31, then I guess you were pushed back, or given more
yeah.
classes
Right.
to get better. And but yeah, you were not given an instrument until you passed
Wow.
exercise solfege exercise number 31 of the book. And in terms of choosing an instrument, I really can't remember how they would choose the
Right.
instrument for the kids. I remember me when I chose saxophone, and I was at home, and I
Uh,
remember this vividly. I was at home. The radio was on,
uh,
and suddenly the main theme for the Pink Panther, uh, comes
that
out.
got you. That got you.
That got me. That sound of that tenor
Yeah.
saxophone,
Right. Yeah.
and I didn't know it was a tenor sax. I didn't know it was an alto. I don't. I remember listening to that, and I was like amazed by that, and and having that influence of, already my sister and my brother were already in
Right.
the school and already practicing at home.
Right.
And I remember going to my mom, and I was like, "Mom, I want to play that instrument."
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and a few days later, she took me to the school and signed me up. And I remember they just told them, she said, the instrument I was already interested in.
Right.
And when I passed that solfege exercise, they took me to one of their saxophone teachers.
Right.
Uh, and that's how I got
Yeah.
started. Uh,
That's really amazing because I even talked about this when I was teaching how our individuality, we geared or go or gravitate toward a certain sound. Your sister maybe
mhm,
went to that flute, your brother the trumpet, and so forth. And
yeah.
I like to tap into what happens in the brain to really go toward that area. But what I want to ask you next is, you talked about your influence with your dad and the classical music there, and you have an extensive background in that style and many different other styles. But your thing is the classical saxophone. Talk a lot about that and how you got into that.
Yeah, sure. So right, at 11 years old, I started in the School of Music there in my hometown. I
Mhm.
took lessons and all that, and all the way through high school, I was placed in different ensembles, from concert band to, I remember being in a saxophone ensemble, which
Mhm.
we played, mostly of what we played was Latin music,
Right.
and jazz too. I remember.
Yeah.
So in high school, I was exposed in jazz, and I remember my saxophone teacher. His name is Nelson Vega.
Mhm.
I don't know if he's retired now, but I know he's still very active in
Right.
in Puerto Rico. Um, and he started teaching me how to improvise when I was in ninth grade.
Okay.
Um, so I got, in high school especially, I was mostly playing like commercial styles of music and Latin music and that sort of things. And sure, I will be playing classical, but it was mostly in the concert band setting.
Right.
And I remember that my concept of the saxophone as a classical instrument uh, back then was only within concert band,
Uh,
which which we will be playing like usually right in a concert band. You're usually doubling the French horns
right.
and things like that. So that was my concept of classical saxophone. Now, as I was a senior in high school, I was interested in writing already. Then I was already decided. Yeah, I want to follow the path of a musical career.
Right.
And my teacher, again, my saxophone teacher, he was great. I was very blessed to have him as my first saxophone teacher. He said, "Okay, so you want to go to the Puerto Rico Conservatory, then you gotta listen. You gotta listen to classical saxophone.
Right.
You gotta listen to this." So he guided me to. So he simply told me, "Hey, just look for a classical saxophone CD online."
Yeah.
And of course, I know I'm quite young, but I remember still, when I was a senior in high school, YouTube was still not a thing, or I
Right.
remember Amazon was happening. So I went through Amazon and I just searched
Ah.
a CD.
Right.
So yeah, I still didn't have the benefit of like streaming services or like
Right.
or
Right.
Spotify or anything that didn't exist in the in 2000 or 2001, which I was in high school then. Uh,
Okay.
so uh, so I remember I ordered a CD, just a random classical saxophone CD. I didn't know the person or anything,
Right.
um, or the artist. And I got the CD and I started listening to it, and I started listening to it. I was like, wow. I mean, this is different. And I think the what really caught my attention was the what how different it was from
Okay.
everything that I heard related to saxophone, right? The
Uh,
In terms of sound, in terms of the music style,
right.
and I was really attracted to it because I think coming from a background in my family that they were classical music lovers, that I also enjoyed listening to classical music. So
Right.
I felt that connection of like, wow, okay, I'm a saxophone player, but I can I can actually that is a thing, playing classical music on
Right.
this instrument,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
going away from, okay, saxophone is only for salsa, for merengue, or for jazz,
Right. Right.
like I was like, it was amazing to me that, like, wow, like I can actually play classical music
You
on this instrument.
you know that it fascinates me that at that period in your life you could have went the other way. There are some people that would have said, "Okay, mom, dad, and love that classical, but I hear that jazz or that pop. I want to go this way,"
Yeah,
But you navigated toward it.
yeah, yeah. I did, and I also think that part of it was that at some point when I was in middle school and high school, I enjoyed also listening to a lot of film music, also
Yes.
especially John Williams music. And then back in '98, I remember I bought the soundtrack for the Gladiator movie
Oh yeah.
by Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
Uh, I was in eighth grade or ninth grade, and I remember just like listening to those albums like over and over. I I really
Right.
enjoyed film music. So, which is, in a way, a
Sure.
lot of film music, right, is mostly related to that classical
Right. Yeah.
aspect of music more than pop.
Right.
Um, so that didn't take my. I always loved pop music too and jazz,
Right.
but as I was entering college, like that just caught my attention that being able to play classical music that I loved so much on the instrument that I loved so much.
Right. Yeah.
so
It's a
so and
win-win.
that was, yeah. And when I went to college, I had my mind clear and was like, yeah, that's the style I want to follow. That's like
Right.
what I want to do. I want to play and I want to become a very good classical saxophone player.
So,
So that was,
so
yeah,
you went into the conservatory that was in San Juan?
in San Juan, yes,
Okay.
in yeah, in the capital of Puerto Rico.
And talk to us about that experience there.
It was great. The conservatory is the main musical institution on the
Okay.
island. Of course, there are other music programs, but that
Uh-huh.
that one is the biggest.
Hmm.
It's also the main, and again, and also being a conservatory, right? A conservatory tends to be more conservative.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was. I have to say, there was a little bit of struggle too in terms of with colleagues and all that because being a more conservative place, this idea of the saxophone
Yeah.
being a classical instrument, it's like was sort of like what is that? What is that? It's like no, that
Yeah.
that shouldn't be a thing. That instrument should be for like
Yeah.
jazz or for other, yeah.
It doesn't get quite
So
the respect.
yeah, so in a way, my experience and the experience with the whole saxophone studio and my teacher
Mhm.
in at the conservatory, his name is Wilfredo Cor. Uh, he was the classical saxophone teacher at and the first classical saxophone teacher at the conservatory. Uh, and that was a struggle for him all the time. That trying to bring awareness of the instrument and
Ah,
acceptance for the instrument uh,
right.
in the institution and to
Right.
other people. So it was always like the main focus was like showing people that the instrument was capable of being used in the
Yeah.
classical
Yeah.
in the classical style.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah, and but my experience overall at the school was great. I mean, I like every other music program. I took theory
Hmm.
classes.
Right.
Um, I was in many ensembles, concert band, and our concert band went to Carnegie Hall
Oh,
one
wow.
year.
Yeah.
I was able to experience that and play at that hall. It was just incredible. Um, and but one thing is that I do regret is, as years go by, is that my focus was so intense into being a classical saxophone uh, player
Right.
that I did not get to experience at the conservatory their jazz program
Right.
and Latin music program, which is really incredible, by the way.
Right.
And I remember while I was there, they would invite many guest artists from different places in the U.S. and internationally to do master
Right.
classes. And I remember I was so focused in the classical
Yeah.
style that
Yeah.
that I didn't get to experience that other parts of the
Right.
conservatory.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So now you're out of the well, I want to go back to that feeling you talked about playing and at Carnegie Hall. What is it about that music? Talking to our listeners that may have strayed away from playing are not music educators, are not musicians, but they played in high school, and they know they have a love for playing music. What is it that you feel when you're not only, playing your sax, but the music when you're in front of the audience and connecting with the audience? Talk about that experience.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting, right? Because I think the the experience of playing in front of people to me has changed over time.
Oh, okay.
Of course, when you are younger and when you're getting started, playing in front of people is just like a nerve wracking mess. It's just like you're terrified. You're terrified all the time of playing in front of people. But over time, I'm not sure how it started shifting for me.
Mhm.
Um, but my approach is to try at first to really think about how the music itself makes me feel.
Okay.
So how when I listen to that music or when I'm preparing a certain piece or pop tune or whatever, it's like
Yeah.
um, how does it make me feel? So a lot of listening goes into the process of preparing.
Sure.
So and then those feelings, those emotions that I get while listening, I
Mm.
try to focus them when I play.
Yeah.
So and my goal is to try to make the audience feel
Right.
those emotions,
Right.
the
Right.
same thing I'm getting, projecting it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I think, and I think it's a cool way of aiming, of like finding that musical experience. What can you get from that music and how can you can project it?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's the connection. Uh, that's what I aim for.
Right.
If I'm successful, I'm not sure if I'm successful all the time, but
But
yeah, that's the
it's almost like a minor miracle that we, as humans, we have this inanimate object called an instrument, whether it be vocal or your flute or the sax or what have you, and you're trying to convey that emotional feeling that we have as humans from one person to another. And we, as instrumentalists, we don't have the luxury of lyrics. That's a huge
right,
benefit, of course. And so you
right.
able to convey that feeling. And prime example for me, like when my mom passed away, I played my horn there, and that was the way I tried to convey my feelings there.
Hmm.
So um, I just think that's a minor miracle. Let's talk about conveying feelings. I have a clip here of a piece called Skylines. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yes, Skylines
Let's
by
take
the
a
Iridium Quartet.
all right. Let's take a listen to that first a little bit, and then I'll bring the volume down, and you can talk a little bit over it. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there and how you came to that.
Yeah, so first of all, this is by Iridium Quartet. It's my saxophone quartet that we formed it. I formed it with my former teacher from the University of New Mexico. Eric Lau.
Right.
So first of all, the group got formed in 2010 actually. As um, I was graduating from UNM with my master's degree, and I was getting started with my doctoral degree at Louisiana State University. And
Okay.
Eric Lau approached me before I left New Mexico, and he's like, "Hey, I'm planning on forming a saxophone quartet with two of my friends, and we would love for you to be the fourth member."
Wow.
And it's like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm interested."
No brainer.
uh, yeah. So, and honestly, this for me, my experience, this group, of four saxophones. Uh, it's basically the best ensemble I've performed with,
Yeah.
and right now our last concert was February of 2019.
Oh
So it's
wow.
been a while since we've played together, right? Because
Yeah.
then a month after that performance, that was when I went to boot camp in the
Okay.
Navy to join the Navy fleet bands. And ever since then, and then of course 2020, we know 2020
Yeah.
will be marked forever in history.
Right.
So everything, it's been difficult. So it's been a challenge to try to get the group back together to do more things. But ever since 2010, we travel a lot. Um, we even went to Scotland in
Right.
2012 to play at the World Saxophone Congress.
Wow.
And so we've recorded two albums. This one, which you played, which Skylands is on, that's our second album.
Uh,
Uh, and we've had other recording projects with different composers, and one of them especially was with a very special project that I will always remember was with David Maslanka, which
okay.
he wrote a piece for. It was a concerto for saxophone quartet and concert band.
Wow. Okay.
And we premiered that and recorded it. This was also 2012, 2013. But the album where that piece is on didn't was not released until I think 2018 was
Okay.
when that album was finally released. Uh, and yeah, it's been great. It's been an incredible experience playing with Iridium Quartet.
Mhm.
So talking about this piece because you asked me about the piece.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Skylines, right? So Skylines is by the composer's name is Peter Lewin,
Okay.
and he's actually based in College Station, Texas.
Uh,
Um, he's a professor there at Texas. I think is it Texas A&M? I think yeah,
okay.
Texas A&M in College Station. And he knew two of the members of our quartet, our soprano player and tenor player. He knew them, and they sort of talked him into writing a piece for us, and he
Okay.
he did. So that was his piece, Skylines. And just as the title suggests, right? Skylines suggests like when you see a major city and you just see the
Right.
skyline on
Right.
the with the buildings, right? So when I hear it, I imagine a road trip when I hear
Right.
this piece. It's like
Yeah.
so you're driving. Let's say you're away from a big city and you're approaching that big city.
Right.
Um, and you finally start seeing these huge buildings just creeping out, and then you just see that
Right.
awesome skyline. And that actually, I experienced that here when I go to Seattle. If I'm driving and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm driving from home, and we're visiting the city, and we're just driving around, and when we're approaching the city,
Right.
uh, it's that feeling, and it's just this uh it's like this feeling of being it's like a I cannot describe it in words really, but uh,
Drawn in.
where you're approaching and you're drawn with this amazing uh, scenery of
Right.
this huge skyscrapers. It's just like
Yeah.
it's just it's kind of like a wonderful but terrifying thing. It's like
Yeah.
uh, you just see this. Wow, it's just like just incredible. You're approaching the city,
Right.
um, and then the clip that we listen to, right, is very very active. A lot of movement.
Right.
So it's like right in a city in a city, it's like that. There's a lot of movement, a lot of traffic, a
Right.
lot of.
Right.
So that's why you hear this motion happening all the time, and it just
Well,
sees.
right. What I wanted to mention is that when I listened to it last night, that syncopation, it's all over. And
Right.
it's fragmented and all of that going
Yeah.
on. And when you were talking, you made me think of as we were coming in, my wife and I, to Albuquerque for the very first time from the east and coming through
Uh
the
huh.
mountains. And as you're coming through the mountains, you're wondering, where is the city? There can't be a city here. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's the Albuquerque and all the skyline like that. And you're absolutely right. You've got that
Right.
syncopation going on, the different tones going on. And that's a great piece there, skyline. And let's. I've got another one here. Set this one up. Let's see. I didn't get the title. Was this your?
Is that the
Um,
the solo piece?
yeah, the solo piece. Here, I'll play
Yeah.
it for
That.
you.
Sure.
Here we go. Oh man, that's it. I puts a smile on my face. That's some.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to cuss on this podcast, but that's some playing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's definitely a very fun piece. That's the fifth and final movement of it's called Tableau de Provence
Okay.
by composer Paul Maurice.
Uh,
Um, and it's a great piece. Tableau de Provence, right? It means scenes or images from Provence. Um, and the But it describe every single movement describes a different painting or a different scene in the town or city of Provence. Um, so this particular movement is called I can't remember the exact name in French, but it does mean like the bumblebee or the bee. And as you can see, all the lines pretty much describe all this fast moving lines up and down, kind of like describes the flight pattern of a bee. Just goes up and down and articulated and sometimes slurred, and it's just this game of how the bee is flying around.
and you end up in the Navy.
Oh, oh yeah. Hey, I think Mark, I think I lost you for a little bit there.
Oh,
Uh,
that's okay. The screen
okay.
changed.
Yes. So were you listening to me
Yep, we got a
this
copy.
time? Oh,
Yep,
okay, okay.
yep. We
I
got
didn't know
all of that.
if
Yep,
yeah, I didn't know if we lost
the
the
feed. Yeah, we got you still. So you're in you after all that. Now I just met you this past summer. Great experience.
yes.
You go to boot camp and tell us how that all came to be because you also are a music educator. You were teaching private lessons. So what happened?
Yeah. What happened? Yeah. What happened indeed? Yeah. In general, you know how it is being, being a musician yourself and a music educator.
Life
You know
happens.
how life happens. A music career is a challenging career. I think it's a very it's a very enriching career, but it has a lot of challenges, right?
Sure.
Back in 2014, I was finishing my doctoral degree, and a friend of mine called me from Houston, and Houston and Baton Rouge or
Sure.
Gonzales, where we live in Louisiana, is only 4 hours away
Right.
driving. So this friend of mine called me, bassoon player, um, and he says, hey man, like the private lesson scene here in Houston is big, and they're looking for a lot of saxophone teachers.
Right.
So would you be interested in something like that? I was like, at the time, I was finishing up grad school. I was working at a retail store on the side to make
Sure.
some money on the side. Uh, it was a music store, so I was doing a little bit of music stuff there too. But it was a retail job, so I wanted
Sure.
to move into try to do something more career related.
Right. Yeah.
So I said sure. Like so he put me in contact with some band directors in Houston, and I went over there. I drove over there, had a few interviews, and they told me, yeah, you're hired. But basically, right, you as a private teacher in Houston, it's like your own business. So
Sure.
so technically, I was freelancing the whole time. So I did learn a lot about bookkeeping, like just like
Paying your
uh,
taxes.
yeah, yeah, because right, all the I basically the way it worked, band directors put me in contact with parents
Sure.
and their students, and I would contact them, and then that's how we would set up private lessons.
Right.
The benefit of it was that I was able to teach private lessons at the schools, so
Right.
there was always facilities available, so that made it easy for scheduling.
Right.
So I would show up at school, sometimes even during the day, during their band class.
Wow, that's great.
Like they'll be having their band class. I would show up, and then that during that class period, I had maybe two students.
Right.
So and then I would see each, 30-minute each if it was a 1 hour class.
Right.
So
Right.
and just like that, and one year, I think it was 2016. Yeah, 2016. That year, I had 82 students.
Oh man, good studio.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
full week of work, basically, because it was half-hour lessons.
Right.
So technically, I have just over 40 hours
Wow.
of teaching privately.
Right.
And then while in Houston, I knew a few people who live in Houston, musicians, and they were very involved in the salsa scene.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that made me. So when I moved to Houston, that also, right, I spent all this years from 2003 to maybe 2014 playing, focusing on playing classical music and classical saxophone.
Right.
And when I moved to Houston, I started getting in touch again with my commercial side of performance.
Right.
Uh, and I was very rusty, very, very rusty. And but I started getting the hang of it again, and basically when I was in Houston, I was teaching the full week, and then during the weekends, Friday and Saturday, I was
Okay.
playing salsa gigs in town.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, that's what I was doing. That's what I did for like 4 or 5 years in
Right.
Houston.
Okay.
Then what happened? Going back there to what happened was that there was one summer that was, summer of 2017, because
Okay.
2017 was a huge, huge year for me too. Which what happened was that my former teacher from the conservatory in Puerto Rico, he was retiring.
Okay.
So, and the position to teach at the conservatory opened up, and they were looking for a saxophone, a classical saxophone teacher.
Ah, there you go.
So I was like, that's my alma mater.
Yeah.
It's back in Puerto Rico. At the time, my wife was already teaching as a music general music teacher for
Okay.
elementary school in Houston.
Yeah.
So I applied. I applied for the job. I got it, and basically our plan was I was gonna move to Puerto Rico first, see how things worked out because the Puerto Rico gig teaching at the conservatory was not a full time job. It was a part time adjunct position,
Oh, okay.
which you get paid by the hour, and it was not a tenure track position.
Oh,
So so I was like, it will be good. It will be great for my resume. So what if let's see how it works. I'm gonna go to
right.
Puerto Rico, and
Yeah.
she decided to stay in Houston, so we were gonna check how things work. And if things evolve greatly in Puerto Rico, then our plan was then maybe we'll move back to Puerto Rico, and
Sure.
uh, so and then what happened was August of 2017, Hurricane Harvey hit Houston.
Yeah.
It went to Houston, so I couldn't start teaching in Puerto Rico on the first week of classes.
Right.
So I couldn't get there in time. And I called the dean, and the dean was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Just do
Right.
what you need to do."
Right.
He tells me, like here in Puerto Rico, we are experts in hurricanes. You know that, so we know how difficult things can get with a hurricane. So don't worry, we
Right.
understand. You just whenever you're able, just fly here. So I had to wait basically until the airport opened in Houston because Hurricane Harvey flooded everything.
Right.
Uh, so I had to wait, and I had to wait until like first week of September,
Right.
and classes had already started in at the conservatory mid August. So I was finally able to travel to Puerto Rico, uh, and then I taught 1 week at Puerto Rico, and that second week, Hurricane Maria hit.
Maria.
Maria,
Yeah.
yeah. So huge. I mean, that hurricane broke records. For the it was the most devastating hurricane in the history of Puerto
Right.
Rico, basically.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was totally unexpected. Hurricane Maria destroyed a lot of things. The whole island went out of power.
Right.
So classes at the conservatory were canceled for over a month.
Wow. Wow.
So it's really became a very tough situation
Right.
for my particular circumstances. And
Sure.
so my wife was in Houston. I was stuck in Puerto Rico
Right.
in a complete devastation.
Right.
Uh, thankfully she was working, right? She was
Right.
working in Houston, so thankfully
Yeah.
there was some income coming.
Right.
Um, and unfortunately, it just for me it became a very tough situation.
Sure.
So when finally classes started again, I talked to the dean and I was like, hey,
Right.
I'm very sorry, but I'm gonna stay. I'm finished my contract, which was for 1 semester.
Right.
And but I told him, but as soon as the semester ends,
Right.
I need to go back to Houston.
Yeah.
So then when I went back to Houston, that was February 2018.
Yeah.
That's when I just saw a random post on Facebook for Navy fleet bands looking for saxophone players. And I was like, well, here I am. I have no job. So like I need to do something. I need to do something.
Right.
So I was like that. So I decided to take the audition, prepare for it.
Yeah.
And I was offered the job over
Right.
there on the spot, and after that I had to go through, like, I
Uh,
was overweight, so I had to, like, lose some weight
you had
to
to get
be
in
able
shape.
to, yeah. So to be the music part was good, but
Right.
my physical part for being a sailor in the Navy
Yeah. A whole nother
was not good.
story.
Yeah, so I remember I got the job. I was offered the job in summer of 2018,
Right.
but it wasn't until March of 2019 that I was finally able to go to boot camp, because I had to work on my weight, and
Right.
so I had to lose. I lost over 40 pounds,
Wow. Wow.
and
That's
just, like,
good. That's
so
good.
and the motivation was like, well, I need this job, like,
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
a job, I need a job. So
So
yeah,
now
so
talk about your experience in the Navy now and your future, where you're going to be
yeah.
going.
Yeah, so the Navy has also been a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting job. So I'm in my first band, right? Like, people rotate to different bands across the United States and abroad, right? There's two bands overseas, one in Japan, one in Italy.
Right.
So the idea is that every 3 years you rotate to a different band. Um, and so right now, the experience after going to the boot camp, then after boot camp, you go to Virginia to A school for a few months. Everyone goes through that. And honestly, my experience there, for me, it was like, well, I already have a doctorate degree, and
Right.
it's like, and then I like, they get, you start getting, like, theory classes again, which were very
Yeah.
easy, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, I know this stuff already,
Right. Yeah.
so but that's simply part of the process,
Right.
and I just had to wait like 4 months in order to, then they gave me orders here uh, to Silverdale, Washington, for Navy Band Northwest. Um, and the I think, really, for me, the most benefit I've gotten as a musician from this job is that I've been able to get in touch again with my commercial side of playing,
Sure.
which is really what I wanted. When I decided to, hey, I'm gonna take this audition. So I always, in the back of my mind, I was like, hey, this will be a good opportunity for me to go back into playing other styles of music rather than classical,
Right.
and really, really focus on my improvisation skills.
Right.
Um, and that's really what I've done. I mean, I've been grateful of being, so the Navy band. How it works is that we have, this band in particular is one of the smallest, so it's around 30 people total.
Okay.
So we get split up in different groups, and so the group I'm in is the brass band.
Right.
And that, we play funk, we play some jazz, we play some rock, we play
Right.
some fusion stuff. So that has been, I found a lot of benefit from it, from as my own skills.
Right.
And I have to say, it's been amazing, working with your son, with Jared.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from him, and I'm grateful to have the experience of playing next to him, because
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about, improvising, and just by listening to him play, and I think that, for me, has been the greatest benefit. Of course, this job in particular is not like you think, okay, Navy band, you'll be playing music all the time.
Right.
And so unfortunately, it's like, it's not, this job, you're not playing the whole time. There's
Sure.
other stuff that you have to do. There's a lot of office work that is not the most fun at
Right.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh but I think at this moment, first of all, I'm grateful of having a steady income,
Right.
and having some benefits that the
Right.
military offers you.
Right.
And right now, here where we are, my wife was very fortunate to get a very good job at a school here,
Yeah.
and she's very happy too. So right now at this moment, we're very happy where we are,
Right.
and what the future looks for me is like there's a lot of thinking going on, because just so you know, a position open for the premier band in Washington D.C.
I heard about that.
So just for yeah, so just for the listeners, right, of the podcast, so the Navy um, has many different bands, but they're categorized in different positions, right? You have the fleet bands,
Right.
which is their standard bands, and there are nine of them. If I'm not right, if I'm correct, there's about nine of them.
Uh,
And then there's two bands. There are two bands that are considered the premier bands,
right.
and the one is the Navy band in DC, and the other one is the Naval Academy band.
Right.
The difference is basically the difference is how you get started with pay. So of course you get paid more money being in the premier bands, and also getting into those bands, the auditions are way harder.
Right.
Um, so definitely the level of musicianship is way higher
Right.
uh, for those bands. So a position open in the Navy Band DC. I'm taking the audition in February.
Good luck.
Let's see,
Yeah.
yeah, let's see how that goes. Other than that, then I've been thinking different things. Either going into the next band, if I stay in the fleet bands, going into one more band,
Right.
doing one more tour,
Uh huh.
or just simply separating when I'm done with this band, simply because of how my life situation is at the moment. Again, as I mentioned, my wife got a great job, and that's something
Sure.
that I also, as a husband, need to think about.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Yep.
so
Happy wife.
so
Happy life.
yeah, yeah, and then I've been thinking other stuff. I've also considered going into education myself. Maybe teaching middle school band. Um,
Right.
so that's one thing I'm looking into. So there's still a
Okay.
lot of, yeah. I think it's I don't know. I find myself that my career has gone into this path of like doing many things at some
Right.
point in my life. So
Well,
it's
yeah, it
yeah.
it does that, and music is the common thread, and one of the things we talk about on this podcast is that, all your life you can stay in music, teaching it, playing it, and that's the other gift besides just listening to it. So, hey, man, I want to thank you so much, Marcos, for taking the time. It's been a blast listening to your journey, and what a journey! It's not over yet.
No,
it's
it's not
just
over.
it's
Far from
just
over.
beginning. Yeah, it's just beginning, man. And we thank you so much for your service and bringing your talents to the Navy and sharing that with the country and the world. So we do appreciate it. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we sign off here?
Sure. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me again.
Sure.
It's been awesome having this time to talk.
Yeah.
To talk about one of my favorite topics, which is music, of course.
Yeah.
Um, so I've if I can say something about, I think you mentioned just like people who have maybe left music,
Right.
um, or were never able to really get involved in music. Um, I think having, if you're interested, uh, try to find time. I don't think music is. only for young people, or like,
Right. Right.
or you should get started in music when you're only young.
Yeah.
Uh, you can get started anytime,
Sure.
and of course the most difficult thing is finding the time for it.
Right.
But you know, if you can find the time, you know, listening to music, getting an instrument that you're interested in, uh, there's no roadblocks really. You can get
Right.
started on any instrument at any point in your life.
Right.
That being said, I do remember I had a student back in Louisiana. He was around 55, late 50s,
Hmm.
and he was just getting started. He was like,
Yeah.
he suddenly approached me and was like, "Hey, you know, I've never studied music, and I'm just,
Right.
you know, I'm like 55 years old. I just want to learn saxophone." I was like, "Sure," you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just like that. I don't think
Right.
is music is forever, really.
Yep.
Anyone can get started on it.
That's right.
So,
Forever. Hey,
yeah.
thank you so much. And until next time, we'll put an ear on your music and keep playing. And we want to thank also the listeners for listening to the podcast, supporting the podcast. Again, you can find the podcast, the Podium Podcast, on Spotify or on your favorite podcast platform. Again, Marcos, thank you so much for coming by. We do appreciate it. And until next time, let's try to play all the right notes.
And listening to the Podium. If you would like to be a guest on the Podium, email the show at onthe2@gmail.com. That's ONTHEPODIUMTOO @gmail.com.